So I'm really excited about something. For a while now, people both within our community and without our community have been, asking me from time to time, is Sweetwater Zen Center engaged in any kind of social action? And really, for a number of years now, we haven't really had an official social action project or program. So after talking to some people in the Sangha, talking amongst the leadership circle, hello, how's it going? Um, so after talking to everybody and meeting with the board, we now have an official Sweetwater initiative to restart a prison meditation project. So this is something that Seisen Roshi and Sweetwater have been involved in before. They did it for many years. And so we just figured that it's kind of something that we could pick back up. We talked to the board about it and passed it as like an official resolution that we are going to, slowly start to embark on this project of bringing meditation into prisons with inmates, continuing a letter correspondence program, right? Inmates from all over the country, even from our old prison meditation project, they still send us letters asking for correspondence, asking for Dharma teachings, asking for books. Maybe look into bringing meditation into some halfway house re-entry programs or something like that. So part of getting started with this is that I actually teamed up with another teacher from Yokoji Mountain Center, and we have begun the process of getting into the brig at Camp Pendleton. So we have been doing, all the paperwork and all the training and stuff. And on Friday, me and his name is Jim, or Yugen is his Dharma name. We went in for our official first Camp Pendleton, get your pass, get your badge, do the full orientation bit. And I'm very excited to start sitting with the inmates there. And, military inmates is a different situation from a state or federal penitentiary, which is something we could also look into in the future. And this really is an open invitation. Anyone who's interested in helping out with either letter correspondence or sending books or getting into the prisons, if you wanted to offer meditation to some inmates, we would really love to get everybody's buy-in. And whoever wants to be involved, please do not hesitate to ask. We're just getting started, so very happy to have anyone who's interested to be involved. But I came across something really magical while I was there on Friday. We were walking around doing a tour of the premises and seeing all the various rooms and the housing and everything and getting a lay of the land. And as we were walking, we came across the commanding officer of the brig, right? This guy is in charge of disciplinary action on Camp Pendleton. And he was, an extremely genteel, amicable guy, had a big goofy smile on his face and very happy to shake our hands and thank you so much for coming and what brought you here. And he ended up being like a really chatty guy. We were there sitting with him for about 10 minutes. And he told us all about his story and how he ended up at the brig and blah, blah, blah. And he told us about his 3 deployments to Afghanistan during the war. And his capacity in Afghanistan was to manage and oversee the prisoner of war program, right? So he was dealing basically with captured Taliban members, trying to get information out of them, making sure that they are, taken care of, and mostly information getting, right? Flipping them, so to speak. And he told me that, or he told us that part of what he did was that after about 3 or 6 months of these Taliban members being in the US military detention center or building, whatever they had there, they had to hand them over to the Afghani prisons, right? Because we were working with the Afghani government. And he said that the average lifespan of a prisoner in these Afghani prisons was tops 5 years. So whether due to starvation, illness, Lord knows what goes on there. And so he said, um, part of his job as the commanding prisoner of war officer for the United States military, part of his job was to go into these Afghani prisons and advocate for these Taliban prisoners and go into their cells and make sure they were getting fed and make sure they weren't being beaten and make sure that they had access to hygiene and all the things. And I was a little bit shocked. I was like, wait. So you're telling me that basically your job in the Afghanistan war was to advocate for our enemies? And without missing a beat, he looked me straight in the eye and just said, oh yeah, absolutely. That's what we want to do. And he said, when you're in a gunfight and someone's shooting at you, you're going to shoot back. And then he said something along the lines of, that's not how we fix anything. That's not how we solve anything. And so maybe some of you, I know Chowa has military time, and maybe some of you know the depth of the military and, you know, the levels of compassion that it's actually involved in. But for a layperson, a citizen like me, I was shocked. I was moved almost to tears to hear this guy with a gun on his hip and boots on his feet and buzz cut and the full military garb telling me, of course we advocate for our enemies. It's very moving to me. So that was one first, beautiful thing from this prison meditation project. And that's kind of what we're doing in there, right? These people who have transgressed the law, transgressed people, created some pretty heinous acts. We want to go in and tap into their humanity, tap into their Buddha nature, allow us both to share our Buddha nature together. He was talking about, one of the best interrogators that they had, and the way that they got the most information. He said, the way we got the most information is we sit the guy down, we give him a Coca-Cola and a cigarette and some big smile and just tell me what's going on. And that's how they got to really connect with these people. So that's such a beautiful thing, and I'm so moved that our military is, this is a commanding officer. This guy's pretty high on the list. He's in charge of the brig, and he's coming with this attitude of such love and compassion. So yeah, I wanted to kind of look into some Buddhist texts or maybe a koan that would kind of highlight what's going on here. This oneness, this compassion. And so I've been doing this thing recently, maybe some of you remember, where I try not to look too hard for a koan, but rather just like turn to a random page and see if that koan is relevant to what I want to talk to. And it's been working out so far. Maybe it's easy to spin anything to sound like anything, so maybe that's what's happening. But yesterday I just turned to a random koan just based on where my thumbs happened to land. And I found a fun one that I think, highlights an interesting aspect of what Commanding Officer Bowman was allowing me to see on Friday. So this is case 10 of the Book of Equanimity, or also known as the Book of Serenity, or the Shoyo Roku. It's called Joshu Sees Through the Old Woman. Attention, there was an old woman on the road to Great Mountain. Sometimes a monk would ask, "Which way is it to the Great Mountain?" And she would reply, "Straight ahead." The monk would proceed a little, and the old woman would say, "A fine priest going on like that again." A monk related this to Joshu, and Joshu is, we assume, the abbot of this great mountain temple. So a monk related this story to Joshu, and Joshu said, "Wait a while, I'll go examine her for you." So Joshu went and asked the same question, and the old woman gave the same answer. The next day, Joshu ascended the high seat and said, "For your sakes, I have seen that old woman through and through." So we have this monk, or these monks, on their way to go see Joshu and practice at Great Mountain Monastery. They call it Taizan here, the name of the temple, Taizan. So think about that, right? You have these monks who are in their little, samway or whatever they're wearing. They have their little knapsack. And it was a very common practice. This is, Joshu lived in the 8th century, 8th or 9th century. So we're talking about, 13 years ago or so. And it's a very common practice to go around and try to study with different teachers. And, I'm just always struck by the commitment of that. I'm not going to sell bread. I'm not going to make clothes. I'm not going to farm rice. I'm going to, from my dress to my food to my livelihood to everything, I'm going to pursue this way of seeing what the Buddha saw. This is what's most important to me. And yeah, when I read these stories of these monks doing that, it always just makes me stop and think, like, what are my priorities? What am I orienting my life around? I don't want to sit here and say that every one of us should be orienting all of our lives around following the Buddha way, because, that's just not how our karma works. But I can say that whenever I find myself getting hung up on something mean my friend said, or, "Oh, I'm never going to be able to afford this ticket to this fancy thing," or, if I ask myself, "Hey, where are my priorities? What do I really care about? What is my life directed towards?" It can help me sometimes to realize, I don't need to think about that piece of gossip. I don't need to worry about affording that fancy shirt or whatever it is. So it's just kind of a nice check-in, to see where are my priorities, where is my path headed, and what are the various things that are taking me away into maybe a more toxic or self-centered direction. So yeah, to me, even just in this one sentence, you know, a monk is on this path and he would ask this woman, "How do I get to this temple?" Like, I feel like really intimate with this monk already. Like, I know so much about this person, right? Just in that one little sentence. I know that they didn't find satisfaction in getting money. They didn't find satisfaction in chasing after love. They didn't find satisfaction in building things. They're really on this path to what is my true self? What is going on here? Why is there suffering? Why do we die? Who is it that dies? Who is it that is born? And that's just such a personal, intimate, beautiful thing. I don't know. That's what it feels like to me. That's what I'm here for, to really investigate what's going on here. So these monks would be doing this on their path, and they'd be looking for, they don't have GPS, they don't have Google Maps, right? So they're just trying to find this temple that someone told them was here. And then here's this old woman on the path. Maybe she's selling something, or Her hut is there. Who knows why she's there? And so these monks would ask her, like, hey, how do I get to Mount Taizan? How do I get to Sweetwater Zen Center? And she says, straight ahead. And she would always say, straight ahead. Right? So maybe on one level, she's actually saying, like, that way, walk that way, straight ahead. But I think all of us in here know by now that these koans are pointing to something a little bit more, right? So what does straight ahead mean to you? That's a big part of this koan. It's knowing for yourself. What does that mean? How do I go straight ahead? What does it mean if I'm not going straight ahead? When am I pulled in this direction, that direction? And this straight ahead, you know, if I was like a stinky Zen person, I might say something like, this straight ahead reverberates through the walls of the yurt today, right? That's some kind of like Zen-y language. And we can assume that this straight ahead is kind of like Gute's one finger, or hitting someone with a stick, right? It's this inexhaustible teaching, right? The one finger thing, there was this old teacher named Gute, and anytime anyone would ask him a question about Buddhism, how do I get enlightened? What is Buddha? Why this? Why that? He would always just answer one finger, always. And so Shishin Roshi, the author of this book, says that this straight ahead for this woman is kind of like Gute's one finger. How do I realize the Buddha way? Straight ahead. How do I deal with my bully? Straight ahead. I'm so confused about my identity. How do I figure out who I truly am? Straight ahead. So then the monk would walk on, say, thank you, okay, I'll go straight ahead. And then the woman says, a fine priest going on like that again. Right? So she's essentially saying, go straight ahead. And then she says, why would you ever go straight ahead? And she has to say that. Why? Because, for instance, in the Heart Sutra that we chant in the mornings, we say very clearly, no extinguishing, no path. The minute we think that there's some kind of way, some kind of method, some kind of formula, some kind of center, we miss it. So as soon as you say straight ahead, yes, straight ahead, okay, that's my mantra, straight ahead, then if the old woman is worth her weight in gold, what's the saying? Worth her weight in gold? Salty gold. Then she owes it to us. She owes it to Joshu. She owes it to the Buddha, and she owes it to the monk to be very clear, to let go of that straight ahead. Is that praise? Is that censure? Is that criticism? Right? She says, a fine priest. That's nice. But you're going on like that again. How does the monk respond? How do you respond? Blah, blah, blah. So the monks go and they're like, Joshu, yo, there's this woman and like, she's saying this thing, but then she's taking it back and I don't understand what she's saying. Like, what's going on here? What is this woman doing? And Joshu says, I'll go examine her for you. So he goes and he says, hey, how do I get to Mount Taizan? Right? And what is this question? How do I get to Mount Taizan? How do I practice? How do I see? How do I deal with Taliban? How do I deal with war? How do I reconcile birth and death? How do I treat anything like it matters when this entire universe is going to explode in a kalpa fire? How do I reconcile this? How do I make sense of this? How do I manifest what the Buddha saw? All of that is encapsulated in this, how do I get to Mount Taizan? Straight ahead. Fine, priest, but you still go on like that. And so then Joshu comes up the next day, he gives a talk, and he says, I've seen that old woman through and through. So, working on this koan, which I hope all of you do, if you feel so moved to, it's your job to really see for yourself how to see this woman through and through, and to be able to demonstrate how to see through this woman. And so I don't want to give that away or talk about that too much, but I do want to talk about, what that is. What is this practice? Seeing something through. How do we see through our problems? How do we see through our mortality? How do we see through our spiritual confusion? It's a really good phrase, seeing it through. I looked for some other translations because we're so reliant on these translations, and I didn't find anything really inspiring. I saw, I checked out this woman. I saw investigate, I investigated this woman. But I really like this seeing through. And what is it to really see through something? Right? We have so many beautiful tools at our disposal with therapy and science and all kinds of study that we can understand things, right? We can certainly, try to make sense of things and understand our own karma and come up with exercises that maybe like fix the problem. But Joshu didn't like fix anything here. He simply just went, asked the same question, got the same answer, and saw completely through it. And as Shishin says, it's our job to understand that Joshu and the woman are seeing through us right now, and we are seeing through them. So what is it to really see through something that goes beyond fixing, that goes beyond, good or bad, life and death, to really see through, to get the absolute essential nature of things? And that's what I think Zazen is. That's what I think we're doing here, right? As important as it is to maintain mental health and to have practices that allow us to like understand our world so that we can be of better service to ourselves and others, Zazen presents this very unique opportunity to do away with the understanding, to do away with the trying to make it this way or that way, and to just simply give the universe a Coke and a cigarette and say, tell me what's up. Commander Bowman was just telling me these moving stories of, these Taliban people that they would capture. They're like 19-year-old kids, 16-year-old kids, and they were hungry. And these folks came along, gave them a gun and some food, and said, you know what I mean? So to be able to listen and really see through what is actually happening here goes way beyond fixing the problem. I don't know about beyond, but goes way more intimate than just fixing the problem. So yeah, I really encourage us to really see Zazen as that, allowing our questions, our curiosity, our confusion, our conflict to really just be and just listen, not trying to fix, but just listen and be one with what is going on. And if you can do that, then you can really see through this woman and be able to show it. And I want to be able to see through each one of you, and I want you to be able to see through me. Right? There's also this seeing through translation is kind of a nice pointing at transparency. How can we make everything totally open and transparent? So thank you for taking this trip through Joshu's seeing through. And yeah, I really encourage everyone to come and sit Allow all the fixing stuff, all the understanding stuff to just kind of settle and give space for your life to see through you.